I don't know about you, but for me, June absolutely flew by. I definitely got myself into very chunky books, and there were definitely some days where I did not read anything at all. But surprisingly, with that being said, I loved all four books that I read this month. So starting off strong, I read Ghosts of the Shadow Market by Cassandra Clare. This is just a bind up of novellas and short stories that take place in the Shadowhunter universe, and most, if not all of them, had my absolute favorite character. So I really loved that aspect of it. Some of the stories were a lot more interesting and exciting than others. There were a couple that I found a little bit dry, so because of that I rated it 4 stars, but I did really like this one, and I think this was my favorite collection of short stories by Cassandra Clare. They're not normally my favorites just because I find right when I start getting into a story it ends, but this one was definitely pretty good. It was really nice to revisit some characters from some of her previous books, so I definitely loved that about it as well. Then I read Whispers by Dean Koontz, and this one I rated 5 stars. I really loved this one. It was spooky and gave me that feeling that I was being watched, and I really love getting that from horrors and thrillers. I find that if a book can make me feel that way, then obviously it's very tense and suspenseful, and the atmosphere is just absolutely perfect. I found Dean Koontz's writing to be a lot like Stephen King's, so if you are into Stephen King, I definitely recommend this one. It was just as good as some of my favorite Stephen King's. I highly recommend this one. Next, I read My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix, and this one was also a 5-star read for me. I loved this so much. Basically, the cover captures the story perfectly. It is an 80s horror with a little bit of comedy thrown into it as well. It gave such a good 80s summer horror flick vibe. I found that the gore was done very tastefully. It kept me on my toes quite a bit. I did not want to put this one down when I was reading it. I actually ended up reading it within the span of 2 days. So I highly recommend this one if you're into horror. Just keep in mind it is horror, so obviously there are going to be some pretty icky scenes, and if that's not really your vibe, I might recommend skipping this one. As well as the last book I read. This one is absolutely disgusting. It's Uzumaki by Junji Ito, and because of this, I swear to you, I will never look at a snail the same way ever again. And if you know, you know. I think this is probably one of the scariest books I have ever read. People are not kidding when they say this is Junji Ito's scariest. It most definitely is, or at least it's the scariest by him that I have ever read, and it honestly has potential to fuel your nightmares. So if that sounds like your vibe, I highly recommend it. I went into it hoping to be scared, and I definitely got what I wanted. So I rated this one 5 stars. I thought it was very creative, very unique. The illustrations were absolutely disgusting, and I felt physically ill because of this book at times. It was so gross. If that's your thing, I recommend it. If that is not your thing, 100% recommend skipping it because it will keep you up at night. So those are the 4 books that I read in June. I had an absolutely amazing reading month considering I read so little. They were all 4 pretty chunky books, 3 of them in particular. If you love the horror, spooky, moody nature vibes, last week I did just post a horror reading blog where I read My Best Friend's Exorcism, Whispers, and Uzumaki, and kind of went a little bit more in depth with those ones. But with that, I think I'm going to leave this short little reading wrap up here. I hope you have a great rest of your week and happy reading.